Black Clover Chapter 325. Today we talk about Asta's true anti-magic potential. Could Asta use the anti-magic orbs that surround him in his Devil Union mode in the same way that Yuno uses his star magic? Furthermore, we talk about the possibility that Yami could open the underworld by using his dark magic dimension slash with a World Tree magic katana. Also, only small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video, let's go! Black Clover Chapter 325 begins right where the last Black Clover chapter ended, with Asta, Yuno, Yami and Nacht facing the king of the underworld, the supreme devil, Lucifero in his new transformation. Many people have assumed that this is actually Lucifero's final stage, but I highly doubt it. First, it will feel a bit rushed to be honest, and secondly, remember what we said in one of our previous reviews, that when those devil marks on his body start to move towards the center, it is most likely an indication of how far Lucifero has already manifested. And that's exactly what happened. We saw all his devil marks all over his body moving towards a certain point, in this case the center of his chest. But at this current stage, the devil marks didn't reach that point completely. It looks like Lucifero is actually one transformation behind his final stage, so we can assume that he is probably about 70% manifested at this point. Personally, I would hate to say 80%, even when it would make sense, because I expect Lucifero to simply be much stronger at 80% than he currently is. And I honestly have a bit of trouble seeing a difference between his current stage and when he was only 50% manifested. But perhaps the percentage is just an indication of a linear increase in strength until it then reaches 100%, and thus develops its full potential, whereby the strength does not simply stop at 100%, but then explodes exponentially. So that when he has then completed his full transformation, his power level suddenly becomes many times stronger. Because let's face it, this is apparently the Devil King, the so-called strongest devil of all time, alongside the two other rulers of the underworld. If Black Clover isn't cancelled and Yuki Tabata is allowed to draw at least 600 chapters in total, we are only halfway there, but we are already up against what appears to be the strongest opponent ever. So take the current power level and potential with a grain of salt. Things can change drastically at any time. And so begins the so-called final battle. Asta quickly realizes that with his current power level in his base form, he has absolutely no chance of making a positive contribution to the fight. So he decides to use the Devil Union mode once again, as he has 2 minutes left before he will then be forced to take a 30-minute break. And we all know that without his Devil Union, Asta is pretty useless in the current power level in Black Clover, but maybe that's even the key for Asta to awaken a new ability when he's backed into a corner and left with nothing more to do than awaken a new power. And so they turn into the Devil Union mode Black Guardian. Nacht then mentioned something very interesting about Asta's anti-magic in his Devil Union mode. He said that the anti-magic covers him and flows through his entire body and the entire environment around him, so he is no longer able to receive the help and benefits of the kids' playground. For those who don't know what the spell does, it is basically a spell based on a full mana zone release combined with shadow and dark magic. Both Yami and Nacht take control of the surrounding mana, so a typical mana zone, while they both combine their magic to create a city of shadows and increase the black moon that controls the shadow city. Once the users and their allies have entered one of the shadows, they can reappear from the different shadow areas and immediately attack the opponent again. This is based on Nacht's shadow teleportation. The problem now is that Asta is no longer able to use the kids' playground, as he would either completely destroy the shadows, or the actual effect of teleporting him to another point in the kids' playground simply wouldn't work anymore. But what's really interesting about it is that it kind of shows that Asta might actually be able to use an anti-magic zone in the future, if he just learns to control anti-magic the way normal people can control their mana. We know that the mana zone is a technique that only the best of the best, the most elite magic knights can learn, with a lot of heart and long training. Of course, not everyone is as talented as Yuno, literally blessed by Tabata. This might explain why Asta hasn't figured out how to use an anti-magic zone yet. But nonetheless, the way Asta's and Liebe's anti-magic behaves suggests that an anti-magic zone could theoretically be possible. The fact that his anti-magic surrounds him and even affects the kid's playground is already half the battle of what an anti-magic zone might look like if Asta learns to control the anti-magic that surrounds him. We know that Asta is surrounded by these anti-magic orbs that fly near him, but we don't yet know the meaning of these orbs. They are definitely not just for design, but could also have a use in combat. These anti-magic orbs alone prove that Asta and Liebe could manifest and control anti-magic outside their bodies. We can imagine that Asta could learn to control these anti-magic orbs and thus use the anti-magic around him without using the anti-magic weapons, similar to how Yuno uses his star magic to create stars that he can then use for various spells. For example, anti-magic shields or anti-magic teleportation, anti-magic beams, basically anything that Yuno can create with his star magic. Maybe not literally the same abilities, but simply that Asta uses these anti-magic orbs in the same way that Yuno uses his stars. Maybe Asta could even create an anti-magic zone using these spheres on a similar principle to how Yami's Black Moon works. So a portable zone that surrounds Asta, for example by connecting all these anti-magic orbs and therefore creating a kind of sphere filled with anti-magic. But even without the orbs, Asta and Liebe should actually be able to use an anti-magic zone. In general, anti-magic seems to be the same kind of energy for Asta and Liebe as mana is for normal people. We have seen that Asta can use Licht swords with anti-magic in the same way as Licht can use the swords with normal mana. Asta can also use assimilation to turn into the Devil Union mode by fusing with Liebe, just as Yuno uses the Spirit Dive with Sylph. He can use Yami's katana with anti-magic, just like Yami does with dark magic. So there should be no reason why he shouldn't be able to create an anti-magic zone, just like any other magic knight does with mana. Before my partner continues with this Black Clover Chapter 325 review, please take a moment to leave a like. With your support, we can create more and better Black Clover content for you in return. Thank you.
Asta then uses his new technique, Demon Slasher Infinite / Equinox, with which he can slash only what he wants, that is, only his enemies, and all of his comrades are not hit by this attack. Although this contradicts the principle of anti-magic in general, it clearly shows that there is much more to anti-magic than people think. For example, one of the main arguments why people think that Asta will never be able to use magic of his own is that anti-magic would automatically cancel out all magic. But the Infinite Slash is the perfect example of how anti-magic can be controlled and doesn't necessarily cancel out everything it comes into contact with. Otherwise, healing magic wouldn't work on Asta either, and Asta wouldn't have been able to use the true magic abilities of Lix's swords twice already. That's just a little side note to emphasize that we haven't seen the true potential of anti-magic yet. Then Lucifero confirms once and for all that what we have suspected since he first appeared, that he is in some way afraid of Asta. He says that Asta is the most dangerous, even if he believes that he is also the easiest to kill. I wonder why Asta is supposedly the easiest to kill. Is it because of the typical devil mentality that people without magic are weak, or does it have anything to do with Asta or the anti-magic in general? We can only speculate as to what that means. It could be because Asta is already badly injured and Mimosa couldn't heal him properly. But here we have to keep in mind that Sekre also sealed his injuries, so that can't be the main reason either, unless he couldn't be healed completely and is still in danger of dying from his injuries. Asta is definitely one of the strongest characters in Black Clover. He is very fast. For example, in his Devil Union, it took him only a short moment to fly from the Clover Kingdom to the Spade Kingdom. He's obviously physically extremely strong. It was even confirmed that he was the second strongest character in the entire Black Clover universe in terms of physical abilities before the time skip happened, only after Yami, who was officially the strongest at the time. During the time skip, especially considering his new Devil Union mode, we could even consider him to be physically stronger than Yami, but still below Lucifero. Also, Asta has proven multiple times that he probably has the most stamina when it comes to physical damage. He continues needs to fight and survive the most severe injuries, and so even in the Black Clover data book, his stamina and vitality is listed as 5 out of 5 possible points. Also, anti-magic is the best defense that protects not only his body from magic but also his close surroundings, as Nacht mentioned earlier in this chapter. So it is quite hard to understand why Lucifero made this claim. The only weakness we notice is that Asta lacks a certain finesse to move technically and effectively. We've seen Yami save him time to time again in the fight against Dante, and also compared to Yuno, Asta gets hit by Lucifero much more often, which is due to the fact that Asta fights with pure power and doesn't care as much about his defense, movement and flexibility. This could indeed be the reason. Just before Lucifero could attack Asta, Yami jumped him and saved him. Then it turned out that Yami's new sword, created by William's magic, was pretty much useless against Lucifero's new transformation, since it could not even make a small cut. As we have already described in the previous reviews, the fact that the name of the sword comes from mythology does not mean that Black Clover has taken all the attributes from the mythology. The only reason the first attack worked was because it combined 3 magic attributes, Shadow, Dark and World Tree magic, into one full power attack, while Lucifero was only 50% manifested. However, we're not saying that the sword won't have any effect anymore, especially because Yuno bet on Yami in this chapter, mentioning the World Tree sword created by William, which could emphasize that Yami could get a good hit in the next chapter. We still haven't seen Yami use his dimensional slash with this World Tree katana, so it might actually be effective against Lucifero. Speaking of dimension slash, what if Yami's dimension slash, due to his ability to slash dimensions and the fact that he uses dark magic, the essence to open the underworld, combined with the World Tree magic, which is the key to creating the gates to the underworld, could have an effect on the dimension between the world of the living and the underworld, so that he could slash the dimension to the underworld and free all the devils. Just a little thought that we had when we were thinking of Yami's possible dimension slashes in the next chapters. Anyway, as mentioned earlier, Yuno had a choice of who to entrust with the final blow against Lucifero and had to choose between Asta and Yami, eventually choosing Yami. While giving Yami a moment to attack, Lucifero managed to break Yuno's Spirit of Zulfa, which probably won't last since it's only a spell and not a physical weapon. By doing this, Yuno placed 2 stars to the left and right of Lucifero, to which he will most likely teleport Yami, who will then deliver the final blow. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fact that Yuno chose Yami instead of Asta. We know from the Black Clover exhibition that something is going to go wrong with Asta and Yuno's promise to be rivals for the title of the Wizard King. We see the page with the name Promise burn on Yuno's side. In Manga Shonen Jump series, we hardly see 2 rivals have such a moment where one of the rivals chooses someone else instead of his rival. It's quite a strange feeling to see this in Black Clover, and there must surely be a reason why Tabata made Yuno choose between Asta and Yami. Tabata could have just let Yami do what he planned to do without putting Yuno in front of such a decision. But if the focus is more on the relationship between Asta and Yuno and the trust Yuno has in Asta, then Yuki Tabata could have done this to slowly prepare us for a change that could happen between Yuno and Asta in the future. Of course, Yuno has given a rational explanation as to why he thinks Yami would be a better fit at this point, but it's still very unusual for 2 rivals in a Shonen Jump series. Of course, we don't mean that they suddenly stop being friends because of this. We rather mean that Asta might be a bit hurt that Yuno didn't believe that Asta could pull it off. Maybe this will make Asta surpass his limit. We know that strong emotions can make a person learn a new ability, so maybe this will have something to do with that. So that's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.